Welcome back to the Faculty Factory podcast, friends. It's Kim Skorupski here at the University of Texas Medical Branch in Galveston, Texas, where I have to tell you about a recent $25 million gift for our Moody Brain Health Institute, headed by Dr. Giulio Tagliatella. So we've got great things happening here at UTMB, and I'm proud to be here and love this beautiful island. Come visit us sometime. Now, with me today, I want you to guess. I have a Chicago town jazz R&B performer. Does not want me to say famous, but there's some fame here. Former electrical and computer engineer, secretary of the Smithsonian Institution. Who in the world am I talking about? Can you guess? Distinguished professor at Georgetown University, member of the National Academy of Medicine, the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, and the American Philosophical Society, a lifetime member of the Council on Foreign Relations, and a fellow of the American Association for the Advancement of Science. Who am I talking about here? Dr. David J. Skorton, President and CEO of the AAMC, the Association of American Medical Colleges. Hi, David. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Hey, Kim, I'm so jealous that you're in Galveston. It's very, very cold in DC right now. And as you may know, I'm looking forward to coming down there in the spring. Looking really forward to being on that island with you and other colleagues I have there. But listen, before we go any further, I got to rebut some of the mistakes that you made.
Uh-oh.
No, not a famous musician at all, not at all. And I'm actually not an electrical and computer engineer. I had an appointment in that department because of my research. So this is a very distinguished podcast, and I think my job today is just to keep you accurate. But it's such a thrill
Oh.
to be here. Congratulations on what's going on at your school. Congratulations on the podcast. You guys are really knocking it out of the park.
Thank you, David. You are so kind, so generous. Yes, we can't wait to see you here at Oz, our keynote speaker for the commencement ceremony here at UTMB in May. When I was reading your bio sketch, and it started with your being an assistant professor in that department, I thought, this guy does everything. So, David, we'd love to hear your journey, how you began your career, and how you ended up in this prestigious position.
My family did not have a history, forget about medical school, didn't have a history of college. When I was around 8 years old, we moved from Milwaukee to Los Angeles. We moved there for a variety of reasons. We had some economic reversals in Milwaukee. LA was a place of great opportunity. Right now, on the date that we're recording this podcast, LA is facing just horrendous fire and wind issues. I had bad asthma when I was a kid, and a pediatrician told my mom that if they got me to learn to play a wind instrument, it would build my lungs up and I would do better. And so they tried me out in a bunch of instruments. I eventually ended up on the alto saxophone, and I really, really enjoyed it. And I thought I was a gift to the world in saxophone playing. Actually, I wasn't, but I thought I was. And so I had no intention, Kim, of going to college. What I wanted to do was to become a session musician in LA. One of those people where, let's say, Kim is recording a record and she needs some backup musicians, and there would be a list of alto sax players, and I'd be in the top, 10 or something. They'd call me in, and then I would play. But I thought I was sort of an A plus alto sax player, but I was actually a good solid C plus or B minus, which after all, those are passing grades, but not good enough to do it. So my dad, who just got to his last year in high school, said, I really think you should go to college and build a future for yourself. And that's really how I got started. So no, I had no idea that I'd have any leadership position or anything like that. I started college, I continued to play, transferred from UCLA to Northwestern in Evanston, Illinois, played in that R&B band that you mentioned in Chicago. Did not pay as much attention to school as perhaps I would have if I wasn't up till all hours playing in clubs around town. And somehow Northwestern took a chance on me, admitting me to the medical school off a waiting list. And when I got into that part of med school where you're learning about bedside things, doing history and physical on a patient, I fell deeply in love with medicine, and then it was off to the races. I wanted to have a career in medicine. Still, I had no clue about leadership positions. I just wanted to learn. I did some research with some folks who were real card-carrying electrical engineers in image processing of cardiovascular imagery. Along the way, I was asked to be one of the two chief medical residents at UCLA Center for the Health Sciences my last year that I was there. And that was the first chance I had to lead. And I learned early on leadership from Ken Shine, who was the head of cardiology at UCLA when I was first there, later went on to many leadership positions. And I learned a lot from my co-chief resident, who was just a fabulous, fabulous individual, became a cancer physician. And those two folks taught me a lot about leadership through on-the-job training. And so that was my first inkling. And sorry to go on so long about that, but that's where this all came from.
I think it's fascinating. Thank you for sharing your story, David. I think so many, when we coach faculty members and mentor faculty members, have that imposter syndrome or feel like I need to get another degree. I need to read 100 more books. I need coaching. I need a lot of, work and preparation. And yes, all of that makes sense and certainly can't hurt. Learning is never, wasted. And also, I think we underestimate the value of uh, on that job learning and just that the mindset of being willing and humble to know that you don't know everything, but to ask for help and to seek assistance and guidance from people who are very, the near peer mentoring. So I think that just makes so much sense. And again, it's reminded me of the conversation we had with Dr. Paul Rothman, this the same thing. He mentioned a lot of the same thing, learning, learning, learning. And you're saying the same thing with Ken Shine at UCLA. Do you remember, David, a specific lesson from him about thou shalt or thou shalt not? Does something stick in your head or with the co-chief resident that you thought, oh, I'm going to remember that?
Yeah, first let me tell you a story from a different kind of mentor. So my very first day as an intern, called them interns in those days at UCLA, we were in our orientation, and we got through the orientation, and they said, please look on this list with your names, and if there's an asterisk next to your name, you're on call tonight, and there's patients waiting for you to be admitted. So I went upstairs, and there were two patients waiting for me. One had a disorder that I felt comfortable dealing with. The other one had a complicated metabolic crisis, and I just didn't blank exactly, but I felt beyond my element. And so I went over to the charge nurse on the station, nurse in charge, and I said, "Do you have a internal medicine textbook?" And she said, "Yeah, we do, but maybe can I ask you, doctor, are you needing perhaps a little bit of help with this second patient, complicated?" I said, "Boy, I really am." She said, "Well, why don't you sit down with me?" And she gave me an order sheet, and she said, "Here's some things you might consider." And then she dictated what I needed to do, how much fluids, how much insulin, what I need to do. And she helped me through and helped that patient get better because of her guidance. And so, one thing that lesson taught me was that mentors come in all shapes and sizes, and that they're not always your boss or your boss's boss or your boss's boss's boss or someone who wrote a book that has the word leadership on it. So that's one. My co-chief resident, William Hocking, became a well-known oncologist. We had much different sets of interests, but he had terrific leadership skills and organizational skills when we were doing the clinical scheduling for the Department of Medicine residents, and I learned a lot from him. And Ken Shine, the there's not enough superlatives for me to share my regard for Ken Shine. And one of the things that he did was to teach me by telling me and showing me not to reach beyond what you know, not to be embarrassed to say that you don't know. And along the lines, when I was finishing the residency and just beginning my fellowship in cardiology, also at UCLA, the day that I started was the day that my eventual deep, deep mentor, Joseph Perloff, was starting his professorship at UCLA. Dr. Perloff was one of the pioneers in the treatment of adults with congenital heart disease. And so, because of my co-chief resident, because of Ken Shine, and because of Joseph Perloff, and because of that charge nurse, I found out that you can learn so much from people, regardless of what you thought you were going to do. And so, I guess what I would give advice to people who are even remotely contemplating leadership is to be very open to learning everywhere and from everyone you can, not only in the usual hierarchical sense.
Thank you, David. People with a rich experience and a background like you, uh, not focused on one particular way of viewing the world. When you're in the arts, and obviously through the Smithsonian and through music and through different fields and specialties, through the engineering to cardiovascular, and being active in the community and community initiatives and DEI, all that way of thinking, how does that turn into strategy? How do you process opportunity and make decisions when, if you're saying you talk to multiple people to learn from them, and if I'm talking to five different people, I'm getting five different perspectives, how does that get into your brain? And then how do you filter out? I'm thinking like in a musical a piece when you know you're hitting the right note. How do you process that? Can you kind of share any thoughts around your thinking?
Sure. I want to share a caveat with the listeners and with you, Kim. My pathway has been very nonlinear and unexpected, and so I would give a few thoughts, and I don't know whether this qualifies as anything approaching wisdom or advice. It's just what happened to me, and so if it feels right, if it fits, maybe somebody who's listening can get something out of that. But no, number one is this Zen Buddhist concept of beginner's mind, beginner's mind. And there's a well-known uh, Zen Buddhist monk, Shunryu Suzuki, who in his book said the following. This is an approximate quote. In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few. End of quote. So the idea is don't be so sure that you know exactly what to do, what direction you want to go. Have your eyes open, have your mind open, be open to different points of view and to having a beginner's mind, not an expert's mind. That may sound backwards for people who strive so hard to become experts. It's not a matter of uh, deferring the expertise in terms of knowledge. It's the idea of tackling a problem that's complex. And don't we all try to do that with our patients? If someone comes in and has something really obvious, direct, a trauma, something where the cause of the injury is obvious, that's one thing. Something that's less obvious, we need to make sure that we don't jump to conclusions either at the bedside and with leadership, the same thing. So that beginner's mind is one that I found very, very useful. The second, you mentioned already wisely, and that is becoming comfortable with imposter syndrome. I have found, and again, it's one person's observation, I have found that when you have a chance to get a job with increasing, span of oversight, whatever you want to call it, the more complex the institution or the part of the institution that you lead, the less chance you're going to really understand everything going on in it. So when I had the privilege of being a college president twice, here I was overseeing an institution, University of Iowa, and then Cornell University, that was doing everything from Iowa, the most famous graduate writing program in the world, where they invented the MFA degree, to Cornell's amazing first vet college in the country and all these kinds of amazing things. No chance that the president of that university is going to understand even a fraction of what's going on there. So far from fighting off imposter syndrome, it's okay to say, I'm here to set principles. I'm here to help people make good decisions. I'm here to pick wise leadership for these different elements. But I'm not going to pretend I'm going to know everything about it. And when I went to the Smithsonian, I had imposter syndrome like you wouldn't believe because I'd never worked in a museum before. I guess they were looking for someone who had a background in the arts and in science because the Smithsonian actually has an enormous amount of science going on, as well as the arts and culture and history. And here people were some of the world's experts at everything from curation to history to natural history, sciences, arts. I could go on and on and on. And so it's okay to have imposter syndrome. It's okay to have a beginner's mind. It's okay to ask for help. It's not okay to come in and be too proud of the title and convince oneself that because you have a big title, you are it, and everybody better bow and listen to you. That's not a good recipe for success. Listening, learning, beginner's mind, accepting our insecurities, living with them, and learning from those around you. Those are the things that I've learned.
I love that. Thank you. That's want to amplify what you said. No chance that you're going to understand everything. And to me, no chance it's going to happen. That takes a huge weight off the shoulders of faculty members, people in academic health at any rank, that you don't have to know. You're not expected to know everything about everything. We are not the keepers of all truth. And the irony, as you pointed out, is that, well, gosh, that's why they hired me, right? Don't I have to have this foundational expertise in whatever my role is, what I was hired to do? It's a kind of like a yes, and that humility of being able to say, yes, you hired me to do this. I do come with the credibility of doing that. I will perform this job to my best of my abilities. And I'm in this complex new culture, a new environment, a new institution, or new leadership is coming. There's always change and evolution, and that openness to, I know what my skill set is, but I also have to increase my emotional intelligence and my bandwidth to recognize that there's a lot of other wisdom that is fluid, that is always moving and changing. So I appreciate that sentiment of what I feel some people feel like, no, if I have to go be a division director somewhere, I'm expected to be the expert of everything. And if I stumble or fall once, they're going to say, oh, geez, why did we hire that guy? What did we get that woman for? We made a mistake. So I think that is really reassuring to a lot of people. That's coming out of Dr. Skorton's mouth.
Well, gosh, not to turn the tables on you, but you're in a very exciting new phase of your career, and
Yeah.
you're in a new place doing a big job, and you're doing this fabulous podcast. And you have a chance to learn from people all the time. So I think it's also more fun and less anxiety producing to understand that we're all struggling through this life together, and we can help each other in many, many ways. That doesn't mean that they're not hoping to get expertise, which they will get from us, but that we give ourselves a break and understand that being a little more relaxed when it's possible, it's not always possible, and relaxed with our imperfections and relaxed with our need to strive and not always to be there, but to strive. And there's this expression that we're human beings, we're not human doings. And being a human being means that you gotta be open to things around you in every way, whatever that means, family, friends, the environment, whatever it is. And that's true in our jobs as well. True in our jobs as well.
Oh, thank you, David. How do you deal with adversity and stress? In your position, I imagine there are a lot of people who are stressed out, burned out. Their priorities are not your priorities. Um, you're dealing with some of the most complex institutions in the world, academic health systems. When you have all that noise and all that chaos and buzz and all those strong headwinds coming at you, how do you personally um, quiet that or turn that volume down and remind yourself of your values and what you're bringing to the table? How do you do it?
Well, I don't always do it well. And please, to state the obvious, I don't run any of those institutions. I represent them.
Yeah.
I learn from them. When I need to understand what's happening in American academic medicine or elsewhere, I go to the source and ask the dean, the CEO of the health system, the faculty member, the student, the resident. So no illusions and no false modesty meant at all that I and the AAMC, we don't run the organizations. We represent them, and we take great ideas from one and let everybody else know about it in case it's applicable. Something happening in Galveston may be applicable to something happening in Omaha or Boston or, gosh, even Washington, if you can imagine. So it's absolutely important to say that. In terms of how to get by emotionally with these things, it can be really, really hard sometimes. Um, the um, the headwinds that come can be of many types. You could have personal headwinds, illness, family illness, stresses. You could have headwinds related to the complexities of the actual job itself. So, for example, this morning earlier, I was reading another article about rural healthcare and the challenges that we have. And when I was in Iowa for a quarter of a century, there were many rural areas there, not as not as thin population density as in some parts of the country, but rural health is a real, real challenge. And so I was reading about that from people who are living that. I'm not living it, and learning about the headwinds that they face. And so there's something there in learning and having a chance to interact with those folks who say, we're having headwinds and perhaps, you, David, could be doing more to focus on rural health or whatever it might be. And then I'm glad to say publicly that I've had a couple of points in my life, rough spots in the road, where I've had counseling, and it's been enormously, enormously helpful. And one of my heroes in that regard is my wonderful predecessor, Daryl Kirch, a famous academic psychiatrist, who in 2021 published in our journal, Academic Medicine, a very moving piece about his own lifelong struggles with mental health challenges. And so I'm a big believer in asking for help when you need it, from wherever that help might come. I'm a religious person, that helps. I meditate, that helps. And counselors, therapists help as well. So I try to be honest with myself, look in the mirror and say, what is it that you should be thinking about right now? And again, I don't know if this is so much a leadership discussion, Kim, as just, one human talking to another. I think the more we can accept ourselves the way we are and not pretend that we're going to hit some perfection idea that I think is very, very seldom achieved, if ever, I think the better chance that we can get through the day um, in a peaceful way and enjoy as much of it as possible. Not every day is like that. There's a lot of uncertainty in the country right now in education, and I'm looking forward to going forward, seeing how we do in a new political environment. My job is to make it work, is to work with whoever I can work with to make it work. For whom? For the patients, for the communities, for the students, for the residents. And so I'm endlessly optimistic, always looking forward, but thinking very, very much that there's many ways we need to take care of ourselves if we're going to do anything for anybody else.
Thank you, David. And even if you're not a president, CEO of something, you're the president, CEO of yourself.
You bet.
And
You bet.
every day, every interaction with every human being is making a ripple and making an effect. So I think
No,
it's
I want to embarrass you a little bit. I think listening to podcasts like this is a fabulous thing to do because in a course of, less than an hour, whatever it is, people get to learn from people that they might not be able to sit down with
Right.
through your good work. So I think podcasts are really cool. You can listen to them, you can take a walk, you can listen in your car, whatever.
Yeah.
I think it's another way of letting the world touch you.
Thank you, Dr. Skorton. I really appreciate your time being on the podcast with us. And again, everyone listening to this podcast, please share this with your faculty, your colleagues, your friends. Be on the podcast. You also have a lot to share, and we need a lot. We need to hear from everyone and learn from each other. Dr. David Skorton, it's been wonderful. It's been a privilege to learn from you and have some time with you. So thank you.
Take care, Kim. Congratulations.
Thanks for tuning in to the Faculty Factory podcast. We are a faculty development community sharing tools to build academic leaders in healthcare. Maybe you want to be interviewed on the podcast? Please visit facultyfactory.org/contact and send me a message there. The Faculty Factory podcast and website is sponsored by the Office of Faculty Affairs at the University of Texas Medical Branch in Galveston, Texas. Just a quick commercial for our upcoming Faculty Leadership Collaborative Mid-Career Boot Camp. We're hot off the 3-day Faculty Leadership Collaborative Early Career Boot Camp, where we had about 72 assistant professors from around the country and the world. Speakers included Doctors Susan Chubinskaya, Nutan Vaidya, Valerie Williams, Bob Tillman, Karma Fouché, Rachel Levine, Hannah Lundberg, Jennifer Haythornthwaite, Susan Matulavicius, Sonali Kandawal, and Kathleen Gamilla Crudo, Josh Polanski, and me. It was so awesome. Well, the 3-day mid-career boot camp for associate professors is April 9th to 11th, 2025, 2 to 5 p.m. Central Standard Time, all via Zoom. The topics for the mid-career boot camp will include Leadership Presence and Self-Management by Joe Losey at Pitt, Communicating with Emotional Intelligence with Alice Fornari from Hofstra, Leading Organizational Change with Susan Chubinskaya right here at University of Texas Medical Branch, Conflict Management and Mediation with Dave Usum from Hopkins, Strategic Thinking, Planning, and Negotiating with Rejma Jagzi from Emory, Building and Managing Teams and Projects with Wendy Bennett from Hopkins, and Darpan Patel from the University of Texas Medical Branch, Finances and Funds Flow with Vin Pellegrini from Dartmouth, and Creating a Leadership Future, Preparing for Transitions with Archana Chatterjee from Rosalind Franklin. We're also going to have a panel of recently promoted professors who will share their journeys. You'll get 9 contact hours of CME, CNE, and CLS continuing education credits. You've got a curated resource guide, lots of networking opportunities. We have a half hour before, half hour after each day's events for just more community building and networking and Q&A. So go to the facultyfactory.org website. That's facultyfactory.org website. You'll find the link right there on the first page to sign up and share it with your colleagues and friends.